You're looking good, and it feels good to be with you today. Hello, I'm Kendall Brian Hunter, author of the book Consider My Servant Job, which I forgot to set out earlier, but you've seen it in other videos. And this is News with the Eyes of Faith, where I talk about faith from the perspective of Christ and the doctrine of Jesus Christ. No t-shirts for sales. I don't have an intro song. It's just me, you, and the truth. Oh, got a lighting problem. Yeah. They're just lighting us. So there we go. So, yeah, you probably saw Peter Hegseth's defense secretary nominee, the interview with the four ladies really grilling him. Ladies, that's how men hear when women talk to you, like Charlie Brown's teacher. Well, Biden. For the last time, forever, Joe Biden's still president. That's our news item. I bring that up because we saw the debate. We know how the debate went, that he has fluctuating mental acuity. And people went on with that. And then people complained about members of the church, how we belong to a cult. They're a cult in denial. So there you go. Okay, so just before the farewell address, they had that negotiated ceasefire with Hamas. It was off, but then it went back on again. Oops. So I got some technical difficulties. I'll just let me pause for a moment. Okay, that works a little bit better. Sorry, I got the ring eyes. Okay, I think I'm ready to continue with this. So they had the ceasefire with Israel and Hamas. They released the hostages. It was off. It was back on again. We're always grateful for hostages being freed and whoever gets credit. You know, of course, you always give God the credit. And there you go. Let's see. So you have that, but is this the Trump effect, where you have Trump just rewriting the rules of reality? We're playing by a new set of rules. Facebook drops the fact checkers. Yeah, just once they started messing with the algorithms, Facebook, that's what caused the drop off. Facebook was interfering with the free flow of information. They're using community notes like they do on X now. That's actually a good idea where you're crowdsourcing stuff. Many companies are dropping DEI. They went whole hog and then they're just backing off on it now. They realized it was just the wrong direction. The universities have dropped the DEI statements. It's funny because you back in the 50s, you'd have loyalty oaths. And then, this is just a new form of a loyalty oath. It's just that it's a different parties in control, so that makes it okay. In negotiatings, would it be easier for a Muslim to negotiate with Biden as opposed to Trump? Trump has a son-in-law who's Jewish. He moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, which everyone said was an impossibility. Which, yeah, Princess Bride, it's only impossible because no one's done it before. I have to say this. We certainly stand out against terrorism. You can certainly disagree with the State of Israel's policy, but still 100% support Judaism. You support Israel as a state in broad concept, but especially laws and policy statements, that's a little bit different. You do have some leeway there. Biden's farewell letter and his address, like I said, we know from his debate he has good days and bad days. We're always concerned about who's actually controlling his meds, and he has very fluid acuity. He spoke about the oligarchy of the rich, meaning plutocracy. That was a word they used against, I think it was Gore Vidal used against Mitt Romney, the expression robber barons, and about the different rules that the rich people play by. And they were explaining who the rich are. This sounds a lot like the Communist Manifesto. You ever listen to Robin Williams? He had a really bad mouth, and that limited him. You're just kind of stuck watching reruns of Mork and Mindy to if you're concerned about that type of thing, and it's too bad. You have to credit Jerry Seinfeld, who kept things clean and family friendly, although he did kind of do some, later on he got a little bit more of adult humor, but Robin Williams complaining about rich Republicans. Just pause this podcast and Google Oprah's mansion. I don't credit her. I think she's earned every dollar she's got. But when you start complaining about rich people, look at the house you live in. How many homeless people could Oprah Winfrey house in her house? You know, is she doing enough? Could she be doing more? Make as much as you can. The tax rates, Laffer curve, lower taxes increase prosperity. Think about King Noah in the Book of Mormon. Talk about technology, power, and wealth, the military-industrial complex, the technology-industrial complex. Yeah, there's information out there, but it was always slanted towards the left, not the right. So it's the, this is the misdirection tactic, where psychologists call it projection, where you accuse other people of what you're doing as a form of misdirection. Go to the American Debunk. That's a good website about the hoaxes against Donald Trump. Drinking bleach hoax, fine people hoax. It's interesting, the social media supporters, Apple and Facebook, they're supporting Trump now, just because there's been a lot of kickback on DEI. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. President Biden warned about the dangers of AI, even though Kamala Harris was the AI czar, border czar, the czarina, I should say, would be the correct term. SCOTUS, the Supreme Court, and 18-year term limits. Franklin Roosevelt tried that, and when the left doesn't get their way, they pack the courts to get their way. It's a procedural runaround against the people. Presidential immunity, that's just targeted towards Trump. Uses the expression fair shot and even playing field. Now that's interesting because he's been in power, so he's the one who's been perpetuating the uneven playing field. Now it goes back to what I've been talking about with this model about feelings, fairness, and friends. That fairness for the left means distributive justice. Everyone gets their turn, everyone gets a slice of the pie. The end result is the same. Now, you read that in the gospel, everyone goes to heaven, everyone's going to get the same blessing in heaven, regardless of how long they labor. That's one of the Christ parables, about the parable of the laborers in the vineyard. But when conservatives talk, we're talking about procedural justice. Are the rules fair? And we talked about fair shot and even playing field. That's really what conservatives mean, but that's not what they use the words, but they don't mean that. And that's part of the confusocracy I've been talking about. They'll talk like a Republican, but they actually walk like a Democrat, and that's what throws people off. That's where you get sort of mid-level, low-information voters can get swayed as they get caught up in the confusocracy. So some reflections. Personally, you always want to be Christ-like. You respect people's public service, because we need more people in public service, and with the high tax rate and the blood sport, David Woodward called it, the blood sport aspect of politics. Good people are priced out. They just don't want the hassle for their family, but you respect their service, but you have to be honest about the damage they've done. The fall of Saigon, the fall of Baghdad, the fall of Kabul. These are stains that you have to admit, and I'll talk about that a little bit later when we talk about Mountain Meadows Massacre. So this has been talking about why you've had this sea change. The tide has turned. We're getting a king tide of conservatism again, and it has to do with the historian Toynbee. His political theory was called challenge response. Is that when you have a challenge, can civilizations respond to the challenge? If they can respond, they survive. If they don't, they get whacked out. For example, challenge response in American history. The Democratic Party was able to respond to the challenges for a long time, and you call that the era of good feelings, up until the Civil War. Then the Republicans had answers, and they had to lock on the presidency with the exception of Woodrow Wilson. Up until the Great Depressions, the Republicans had the answers. You consistently got Republican presidents. After World War II, that's where we got Franklin Roosevelt in. We've had this flip-flop where we just keep handing off the presidency to different politicians. That's an interesting thing, I think. And that's part of the instability. Each president changes the tax code, so you can't make long-term planning. And right now, the Democrats just have the answers, not just politically, but also socially. I'm going to talk about this a little bit with the DEI and the arts. So you're reading news stories about Disney. That includes the MCU, Marvel, the superhero movies, Star Wars, sort of the legacy Disney things, the live action remakes. You have Skydance, which now acquired Star Trek. It used to belong with Universal. I'm not sure. I was not up to speed on that. I'm not like a deep insider on the arts. I'll watch this stuff, or back when it was good, I'll watch reruns. Heavens, the Star Trek cartoon, the first animated one with the original cast with Kirk, because they had the same writers. But they're all dropping the DEI. They're scaling back. The whole Star Trek Discovery, which is sort of one of these weird prequels like Star Trek Enterprise, which prequel, not really a prequel. Star Trek Enterprise, Strange New Worlds, Discovery. Well, apparently the cartoon Lower Decks decanonized it at the behest of Skydance because Star Trek Discovery was just screwing up everything. Star Trek Discovery got decanonized because they were messing with the Star Trek canon too much. So why is this important? And the reason why it's important is you have to understand how you persuade people. There's 3 levels of engagement, 3 levels of persuasion. The first level, you have the philosophical level. That's the rarefied discussions. Sartre's book, Être et Néant, Aristotle works, that's the technical science papers, New England Journal of Medicine, the formal stuff. Then you have the second level, you have the philosophical, then goes, the next one you have the popular, and there's 2 aspects of it. You have the nonfiction aspect, stuff like Popular Mechanics, Discovery Magazine, Carl Sagan's Cosmos, Bill Nye the Science Guy. That's where it's, you take the cookies, you put them on the lower shelf, and you phrase it in a way that most people can understand them. And that's the gateway into appreciation for science. I remember as a kid watching Cosmos, reading books, I think I was in middle school. I checked out a book on hypnotism once, and that's an interesting subject. So you have the nonfiction aspect, but you also have the fiction aspect. So Sartre wrote these plays and books, No Exit, Dirty Hands, The Flies, Nausea. Tells you about his philosophy. But you also think about Shakespeare. I did not plan this, and I do things on the fly. Like I said, I don't have a producer. It's just me, you, and the truth. You, me, and the truth. So you have William Shakespeare. Now, you notice a lot of his plays take place in Italy. Romeo and Juliet, Two Gentlemen of Verona, The Merchant of Venice. Why is that? He did that because he was bringing the Renaissance to England. And through Shakespeare plays, we got Renaissance ideas, because it's not like nowadays where you could have where you can repost pictures of the Mona Lisa or Michelangelo's David. However, you can produce plays which have these Renaissance ideas, and this is sort of the mystery about Shakespeare. Where did he get these ideas from? How did he pick up on this stuff? How did he tap into this? But in any event, we have the written text of the plays, and for example, with Romeo and Juliet, you have the 2 clans, Montague and Capulet. Then you have the 2 individuals, Romeo and Juliet. So Romeo and Juliet are individuals. They break out of the clan structure, their tribalism, and become individuals and follow their feelings. And that's an interesting breakthrough in modernism, where you get away from the loyalty to a clan, to your mafia family, and you think of yourself as an individual. That's what Shakespeare did. So you have the arts at the second level, arts and then popular articles. So the third one's the personal one. So philosophical, popular, then you have the personal one. This is the kitchen table talk, the dinner conversations like you see in the Blue Bloods, water cooler talk, foyer conversations, where you talk with people heart to heart, and that's where a lot of the change comes in. And these science fiction franchises, by the way, this is why sci-fi is dead and everyone's turning to fantasy right now, is because of the DEI and Star Trek and Star Wars just screwed things up so badly. But these sci-fi franchises are on the second level. It was used for messaging, specifically in Star Trek. You have the themed episodes, but also the Twilight Zone. Rod Serling would do that. Have Gun Will Travel, the TV show Kung Fu. dealt with Asian issues. But back in the 50s and 60s when they're writing, they're still working within traditional morality, what C.S. Lewis called the Tao. And you read about this in his book, what is it? The Abolition of Man is where C.S. Lewis talks about traditional morality. What happened now is we have this shift called the Great Disruption by Francis Fukuyama during the 1960s, so we're operating outside of traditional morality. And that's what's using the arts to perpetuate this non-traditional morality. It's just backfiring, it's just not working. And as a result, a lot of the Disney Plus, the MCU franchises, Star Trek, Star Wars, Doctor Who, they're collapsing. And they're running out of money, so they're not producing good stuff. I just, before I came on, I read that there's a potential Red Dwarf revival. It's a BBC comedy. And they just run out of money, so they're not going to be able to do it. Let me pause here for a second. And they're not doing these revivals because people are tuning off or just having viewership drop off. And so what's interesting is that part of what egged this on is, of course, ticket sales. Like, I didn't go see Craven because I just don't go to rated R movies. I saw Madam Web and Morbius, and oh my goodness, I'd rather have another colonoscopy. So you have these critics like on YouTube that really point some stuff out. Honest Trailers, that's one. Pitch Meetings, another one. Nerdrotic, The Critical Drinker. Overlord DVD. It's interesting. Overlord DVD, apparently he's someone who's a Hollywood insider, so he has to wear this mask to cover his identity, although probably the secret's out. So he has this mask and this fake voiceover. But he has a lot of contacts in Hollywood, and he has sort of a good gossip columnist. But he got on, he just said he really was a fan of Star Trek and just absolutely hated what Star Trek Discovery was doing to the franchise. Another one is Mahler. He's the one who did that frame-by-frame critique of some of the Star Wars movies. I think he just gave up on it. I don't think he quite finished it. Another one is Jesse Grant. He's from New Zealand. He's Maori. But these people are not hardcore conservatives. They're not MAGA hat wearers. They're very libertarian in their attitudes. They're really pro LGBTQ, probably vote Democrat. The critical drinker thinks he's an alcoholic. But they sensed something was wrong. You have the bait and switch. So I'm a fan of Star Wars. Okay. This is my Star Wars vintage thermos. Back when there's just one Star Wars at hand, shot first. Back I took to mastic school. Yeah, this is the original thing. So I'm a fan this long. What happened is they took the legacy characters and just replaced them. You saw that with Luke Skywalker. It was interesting. You have the legacy white male character, and then you just replace with a svelte British female brunette. Rey and Star Wars Luke just have this gut punch when you see Luke Skywalker just tossing that lightsaber over his hand. It's like, what's going on? This is just bad. I do not appreciate this, and this is not what I want from the franchise. This isn't true to the legacy of the character. Canon breaking, just rewriting reality. You saw it with Doctor Strange, where it was supposed to be a Doctor Strange movie, but it was about America, the dimension shifting woman. That they saw this with Indiana Jones, with this very annoying lady who's just upstaging Indiana Jones. I mean, with Rey, she knows how to pilot the Millennium Falcon better than Han Solo. Yeah, that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. The MCU, where you have WandaVision, Captain Marvel, that was a letdown. I wish they had done a Black Widow movie just because you're emotionally invested in the in the Black Widow. Yeah, the villain was a throwaway villain, just no depth to him. The Marvels, Cats, the musical and Cats, that's not geared towards men, but she was supposed to be the savior of the franchise. They want a Phoenix character is what they want, and they couldn't quite get it at that point, so they made Captain Marvel Phoenix. They just didn't do anything with her. You have the canon breaking, the new Klingons and Discovery. Biggest thing is growing up, you had all those Star Trek novels, the Han Solo Adventures, the first Han Solo trilogy, the second Han Solo trilogy, just piles and pages of stuff. Heir to the Empire, Timothy Zahn with Thrawn. Great stuff that you were invested in, and that just all got decanonized, now called Legends, so they're double dipping. They have this new timeline. You have a new timeline in Star Trek, the Kelvin timeline. The least of these just hand shot first. I'd leave that in. It's that. But we had this emotional investment to what happened to Star Trek and Star Wars. I read more of the Star Trek books. I'm more of a Star Trek fan than Star Wars, just because it's a little bit harder science fiction. But I enjoy both. No rivalry. I could do a crossover, Spock's a Jedi Knight type of thing. But these new films and new series hit the DI checks boxes, but it's not what people wanted, and it's not reflecting reality properly. So what got them is they realized there's a connection between DEI, Biden, and the collapse of their entertainment. And they're finally waking up to it, that this is all interconnected. And this isn't a conspiracy theory, just there is an interconnectedness to reality, the web of life. And there is operating outside of this traditional morality. It's something that we all felt in addition to these critics. And related to that is American Primeval. So this is set in America 1857. And it's about Mountain Meadow massacres again, in part, the Utah War, Mountain Meadows Massacre. So your first question is, why do they keep repicking the same scab over and over again? I'm not watching it because I don't pay money. I mean, what is there to watch? All these oversaturated, low-quality entertainment, MCU, Star Trek, Star Wars just don't make any sense, or just people hate. I mean, even the stuff that people like, Overlord DVD, what was his name, Doomcock, I think is what he changed it now. He talked about how he liked the Skeleton Crew, but it just just was not getting the ratings because people are just so disinterested in it. The same thing with, I haven't even talked about DC, the collapse of the DC superheroes, even though I liked Fury of the Gods. I mean, it was getting better. Who was it? Ben Affleck as Bruce Wayne was really perfect in Fury of the Gods, but yeah, we just lost that. But yeah, like I said, I'm not watching it. What I do is I'll watch SEAL Team. That's one with David Boreanaz, Angel. I watch Kung Fu, from the 1970s. That went on for 3 seasons. I'm going through Stargate SG-1. So during the 90s, I was in college, so I didn't watch TV because I was focusing on my education. So I liked the movie Stargate. I thought it was cool, offbeat, and much better than Star Trek Generations. But yeah, I'm finally watching down, and I'm sad I missed it. Same thing with Babylon 5. I'm also watching Have Gun Will Travel. I just finished up watching Miami Vice, and occasionally throw in cops in there for some fun. But yeah, I don't like the embellishment issues with historical dramas. I stick with the primary sources. I haven't read the Work in the Glory series because of the embellishments. They bother me. Right now I'm reading Wilford Woodruff's journal, so I'm reading Wilford Woodruff's version of, his historical record of what happened during the Utah War and Mountain Meadows Massacre. So in the arts, like I said, with this model I talked about with philosophical, I'm going crazy. Popular and then personal, philosophical, popular and personal. I mean, coming up with it, I should be able to remember it. You have the movie Heretic. That's a movie about harming sister missionaries under the banner of heaven with one of the Spider-Mans in there, Garfield. This one, American Primeval. Just retelling Mountain Meadows Massacre, especially with the two ones, Under the Banner of Heaven, American Primeval. And as I said, why are you repicking the same scab? You're just telling the same thing. You're just putting out bad stuff. Of course, there will be members who will just lap it up. For some reason, they need that psychologically, which I don't understand. They need to criticize the church, and it's interesting because it's misdirection. The church has addressed it. Saints Volume 2 covers it. The church had Massacre at Mountain Meadows, where they opened up the archives to them. There's a follow-up book called Vengeance is Mine. But I want to talk a little bit about this repetitive behavior, and it's something repetitive behavior around trauma. Sigmund Freud talked about the death instinct. He had the libido, which is not a sexual drive; it's a life instinct, where you get creativity comes from the libido. But you have the destruido, the death instinct, and he talks about in his book Beyond the Pleasure Principle about people have a traumatic experience, they can't get past it, so they do repetitive behavior. This is the repetitive scab picking over Mount Meadows massacre. The same thing too when you see people leave the church, they keep criticizing it. And this is what Freud talked about about the death instinct. It's a death instinct. Now, I'm not a psychologist. Someone who wrote a book, and it just jives with my personal experience. Oh, I need to do this too. I forgot. I should have said this earlier about connection. So, on my father's side, I have a bunch of Hates. I am related to David B. Haight, but also to Isaac Haight, who was a stake president there. And on my mother's side, I have Dames. That's my grandmother's maiden name. So I am related to William Dame, who is head of the militia there. This is funny. The first time I saw a picture of William Dame, I said, yeah, I'm related to him. Just looks like my grandma's family. So I do have those connections. So I'm not a direct descendant, but I have kind of collateral related to two of the players in there. I, the Lord, will forgive whom I will forgive. It is for you is required to forgive all men, and just leave it at that. And yeah, and I have read the Star Rover. Jack London talks about that in there. So while we're getting a little bit longer, cultural connection. So yeah, politics. It's just kind of easy. It's a transition. A few days, Trump will be in office. Okay, what's our game plan 4 years from now? We need to have we need to be thinking for our next. Who's our next presidential candidate? Okay, don't get caught up in the euphoria of the moment. Think ahead. But here's the cultural connection. 3 items happened this past week. One, Starbucks came out and saying, yeah, you need to buy something in order to hang out at Starbucks. They're turning it into a homeless shelter, a bit like libraries. In fact, in the early 1990s, some municipalities would buy shopping carts for homeless people. Yeah, a source for that, I think Rush Limbaugh talked about in the second book, the way things, the second book was See, I Told You So. But yeah, they did that, so no longer hanging out at Starbucks. The second one is hospital. I did a checkup, and one of the documents I had to sign was that, yes, I will show up to these appointments on time. The last thing is the library. I got this email from them, and they're changing their overdue policy. So you check out a book, unless there's a hold on it, it will get automatically renewed for 3 more weeks. After that, if it's not returned 14 days after it's due, the book will be considered lost, and there'll be a charge for it, and the account will be frozen. And the reason why they explain that is we have a lot of people not returning books, they're just holding on to them, and so the library is buying replacement books to cover these books, and then after they buy the book, someone will return the book really late. And this is just costing a lot of money. The library is having its budget cut down. And freezing the account, yeah, that gets people to start to return books. And what's the common? It's just the pride, people being inconsiderate and selfish. If you're a homeless person, don't hang out at Starbucks. We do have resources available for you. If you check out a book, you return it. That's called restorative justice. Showing up to your appointments on time and hanging up your cell phone, that's common courtesy. You have to tell people to get off the phone, and the doctors and the dentist. Now, this is what the Book of Mormon has to say about that, Enos 1:23. And there was nothing save it was exceeding harshness, preaching and prophesying of wars and contentions and destructions, and continually reminding them of death and the duration of eternity and the judgments and power of God, and all these things, stirring them up continually to keep them in the fear of the Lord. I say that there's nothing except there's nothing short of these things, an exceedingly great plainness of speech that would keep them from going down speedily to destruction. That's from Enos. King Benjamin. For behold, King Benjamin was a holy man, and he did reign over the people in righteousness. And there were many holy men in the land. They did speak the word of God with power and authority, and they did use much sharpness because of the stiff-neckedness of the people. Now, this is an important cultural barometer. When people stop keeping their promises, be it returning a library book or paying back their student loans, I paid back every last cent of my student loan. I'll tell you how to do it. Get out of debt, get on a budget, get out of debt, and don't do drugs. Look up a debt snowball. But people aren't keeping their promises, and you have to use sharpness to get them to keep their promises and be decent human people. And that's part of this DEI quotient where you follow your feelings and you hurt people, even if you know it makes you feel good or it's their problem. You just don't mind hurting people to get your way. I'm going really long here, but there's just a lot of cultural stuff out there. Freud, I was reading, like I said, I talked a little bit about Freud. I'm not a psychologist. My degree is in history. I took a psychology class in high school, so I'm just a person talking. But it is something that's just jived with my experience, and study it for yourself and see if it jives with your experience. Freud, and he had a paper on narcissism, and he had this quote that just jumped out at me, and see if this jives with your experience. This extension of the libido theory, in my opinion, a legitimate one, receives reinforcement from a third quarter, namely from our observation and views on the mental life of children and primitive peoples. In the latter, we find characteristics which, if they occurred singularly, might be put down to megalomania, an overestimation of the power of their wishes and mental acts. The Dunning-Kruger effect, an overestimation of the power of their wishes and mental effects, the, quote, omnipotence of thoughts, close quote, a belief in the thaumaturgic force of words, magical thinking, and a technique for dealing with the external world, magic, which appears to be the logical application of these grandiose premises. In the children of today, whose development is much more obscure to us, we expect to find an exactly analogous attitude toward the external world. This is exactly what I've been talking about with feelings. You base things on feeling. Well, I feel this way, so it suddenly becomes real. And that's omnipotence of thoughts, the overestimation of the power of their wishes and mental acts. In fact, I talked about this with in last week with my last podcast, where Richard Dawkins and he had another person were dropped from the Freedom from Religion board because they said, hey, wait, let's challenge orthodoxy on gender identity. Just because you feel a certain way, feel like you're a man or a woman doesn't make you a man or a woman. That's determined by DNA. Dawkins is a biologist, evolutionary biologist. He says, look, you have chromosomes, it's XX or XY. That's it, not how you feel. And this is really interesting. This is why Michael Savage says that liberalism is a mental disorder. And you want to be respectful about different points of view. So I try not being harsh. Let every word be seasoned with grace, as Joseph Smith taught. But you have to admit, this is going on. Just because you think something suddenly becomes true. That's how a kid thinks. Church needs to build a homeless shelter next to every temple. Well, we already have a homeless shelter. Do we need two? Is a problem just putting everyone in homeless shelters? And how do you staff and fund it? So think about that. Does that resonate with your experience? Don't let me tell you what to think. Think about your experience and think about what Freud said. So we're at half an hour. Here's a quick, let me wrap this up really quick. Life hack. I talk a little bit about finance here. Like I said, I paid off my student loan down to the last cent. And so I'll talk about my personal experience with finances. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a CPA. So this is just me talking. Questions about cryptocurrency. Well, first of all, it's a new thing. We don't have a long baseline about it. It's very volatile. And here's a rule of thumb. You're dealing with finances. One thing to think about, or one thing to pay attention to, is interest. Are you collecting interest? Or are you paying interest? So you put your money in cryptocurrency, you're not getting interest. You put it in a bank, in a savings account or a money market account. Money market accounts have higher interest rates. You're collecting interest. You put it into stocks. Now, you don't get interest, but you do get dividends. That's still a source of income. So cryptocurrency, no interest, no dividends, and it's volatile. Savings account, certificates of deposit, or stocks, you do collect interest or dividends. Another thing, too, is war games. Strategize before engagement. I have this outline that I work from when I do these podcasts, but think about this. This is one thing I've been thinking about. In the past, I've been bullied by people at work, and sometimes I would go to the doormat approach to be non-confrontational, turn the other cheek. But I'm thinking about this. I'm trying to rethink these situations where I had these confrontations and what would have been a more Christ-like approach. So have a game plan, and you probably win. James Madison showed up to the Constitutional Convention with the Virginia plan, and he dominated the discussion. So Always have a game plan. Same thing with college and relationships. Well, right over half an hour, and that's news with the eyes of faith.